Hey y'all, and welcome to Shift the Narrative, where we take the shape of everything we are facing and shift it. This is your host and fellow freedom fighter, Tyria. For those who are joining us for the first time, welcome. Please subscribe on iTunes, click favorites in Anchor, or follow on Spotify. Share and or send a review to shifting.leadership@gmail.com. To our continuous listeners, thank you. I am grateful for the opportunity to do this particular segment. Have you ever experienced the loss of a child? I mean, losing anyone close to you in your life is hard. But as a mother who thinks their children will outlive them, to lose a child, I don't even know the words to say. I mean, I lost an unborn child and that haunted me for a minute, for a moment. Thoughts of inadequacy, bitterness, and pain. I mean, talk about pain. I would look at women with 6 children and be like, ugh, why does she have 6 children? I can't even have one. And then I was like, oh, well, maybe I just wouldn't have been a good mother. Or maybe this is just not the path for me. Or, those thoughts that run through your mind when you lose a child is like, it can be damaging. Can you imagine losing your child to drugs or murder or things that you feel like you could have controlled or stopped, but it still happened? The word pain is described as physical suffering or discomfort caused by illness or injury. But for the purpose of this podcast, we are going to add the second listed definition, which is mental suffering or distress. Loss or death of a loved one can cause both physical and mental suffering. But how do we shift the narrative and use our pain for good? I recently sat and talked to a mother who lost her 21-year-old son. Let's hear how she turned her pain into purpose. I'm here with a good friend of mine, Jocelyn, who I've known for many years. And during the time that I've known her to experience a lot of pain and persevere through a lot of pain and pressure, and always show up with a smile, always show up supporting everybody else, and always just being a light in the midst of the darkness that she was facing. So we're going to talk a little bit today about how she turned her pain into purpose. And Jocelyn, I just want to start by saying that I am extremely proud and appreciative of the love and support that you have given me from the moment we met up until now. You've always been a rock. You've always been someone I know I can go to talk to, or just feel some love when I was loveless, or I didn't know how to accept or receive love. And when I was going through the things I was going through that you had no clue about, but you were there for me. My first family in Philly, when I moved out here, and you supported me and took me under your wing and really just made me feel like I had family to go to when I was going through. So first I want to say thank you for that. And I know, through this past year, maybe 2 years now, I think it is.
That he passed?
That he passed, yeah.
A year and 7 months.
Okay, so a year and 7 months that you've been going through a lot of grief. You've been grieving a lot. You've been very vocal about your pain and your suffering, and that's something that a lot of people need to see so that they can know that they can shift the narrative in their life and take their grief and use it as a platform and a foundation for someone else to know that there is hope out there and that it's okay to express their grief. So I just want to give the listeners a little bit of background on who your son was, how he passed, and what you're doing now to honor him in the memory of him. So can you tell me a little bit about your son?
First, I want to thank Tyria for the interview and for the beautiful words that she expressed to me. I am very much about the best gifts in life are free, and for her to acknowledge and put out there how she feels about me, I am beyond grateful, and I feel exactly the same way about her, and she does the same thing for me. And blood doesn't make you family, loyalty does, and that's how I feel. So my son, he passed away July, and the date is still very hard to accept. July 27, 2018. He overdosed on heroin laced with fentanyl. He was someone who was always athletic, always, he loved, and he loved being loved. And he loved others, and he cared about others. My son was always rambunctious when he was little. He just was all over the place as a toddler. He, as he grew up and got older and was in elementary school, and he was always and is still very, very loved by his teachers, his friends. I raised my children in a suburb of Philadelphia, Doylestown, Pennsylvania. I grew up in Philadelphia. All my children graduated from CB West High School. Mm-hmm. My son I have 3 children, 2 boys and a daughter, and now a beautiful granddaughter who Bella. God blessed us with. I also have a stepson that was murdered when he was 18. Also, my children's biological father was murdered when he was 24 years old. There's a lot more I could get into as far as my pain. My pain goes way, way back, decades. And people that I love, because even though they're not here physically, I don't use the past tense. It's the present. Have died in every different kind of way.
Right.
You can say there's been murders, there's been overdoses, there's been sicknesses, illnesses. Right. I also, before I go into my son, 6 months after my son died, my oldest son's best friend, who was a son to me, a brother to my children, who had just gotten married 2 months prior at the age of 27, died exactly the same way as my son. He took heroin. It was laced with fentanyl. This kid had graduated college, had gotten married, had a great job, was brought up well, wealthy, and drugs affect everyone.
Yes.
In every avenue of life, in every area, I don't care how much money you have, I don't care where you live, I don't care what you do, it affects everyone. And the problem here is that people don't talk about it. They're embarrassed. I've heard of people whose children have died up in Doylestown, which is a place where, you have the upper class, right, and are embarrassed to talk about these things. And this is why we hold my son's event, which I'll talk about more. But I found out that after my son passed away, there was another boy that my son knew that passed away. He overdosed. And his parents, even after burying him, were embarrassed to talk about that or tell anybody.
The reason why he passed.
He overdosed. I don't know on what. I don't know
right.
the details, but he overdosed. There are no words to describe the pain of burying a child. Burying anybody hurts. But when it comes to burying your own, they are my life. I always said, I don't care what happens in life. As long as nothing happens to my children, I can take anything.
Right.
Losing him put me in a bed for months. I grieved basically alone. People, they don't know what to say. There's nothing you can say.
Right.
But don't abandon somebody who's hurting. And even if it's an emoji, even if you feel like, okay, I don't want to intrude or bother. So, no, the support needs to be there. We need to support each other in everything, especially with our children. We are all a village, and we should all be taking care and helping each other's children, helping each other parent, because at the end of the day, that's how our generation, this world is going to get better. Right. But the fact is, most people are not like that. They don't, and I get it. You embarrassed about things. Mm-hmm. You don't want to share them. You don't know who to trust. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, what I tell other people is, if you're, my son that passed away played everything. He played rugby, basketball, football, t-ball when he was younger, soccer. He excelled in all of that. He was also a scholar, a straight A student. He tutored calculus. He won many awards. He played instruments. He read books. He loved facts. He loved history. This was not a kid where, like, again, the stigma where, oh yeah, well, he must have been raised wrong, or he didn't have any education, or he was on the street. No, that's not how he was raised. That's not how the people that he surrounded himself with. He worked very hard. He worked at a restaurant. His senior year, he had about 60 colleges trying to recruit him for football, as well as his grades, and he just wasn't ready.
Right. So did you know that he was using that particular drug? Did it start in college? I think that's what the question I want to ask.
Okay, and I didn't realize that, and he went to college, and he came back. He finished the year. I didn't realize at the time, because when you're going through it, you don't think.
You don't see it.
Until after the fact. Okay, so I knew, he smoked pot. Mm-hmm. And I may be chastised for it or not. To me, that's not a big deal.
Okay.
It wasn't something that led, people say that's the gateway drug.
Right.
There's a lot of people that are my age, I'm 48, who've been doing it their whole life, have never tried anything else. Right. So to each his own, but I never thought that was a problem. Okay. And I was raised very strict, and when I had my first child at 18 years old, and he started getting older, and he smoked pot. I was very strict with him about it. I was a very different mother, but then you live and you learn, and so as far as the heroin, I can't really pinpoint when he started it. I do not believe it started in college. Okay. He came home from college. He graduated high school June of 2014. He went to Lock Haven University that August, because he had to start football camp. And I think that since we were such a tight-knit family, it was always just me and my kids. That's how everybody referred. Yes. Me and my kids. Yes. Josie and her kids. Right. We are a unit. He wasn't ready to be away from home. He was mature in a lot of ways, but when it came to that, I think he really needed his mother. Right. I'm his mother. I'm their mother. I'm their father. I'm everything to them.
Right. You were their only support system.
Exactly. Because, we moved to Doylestown. We didn't know anybody. We didn't have any family there. The family we made. Right. And just like with you, I met Tyria at my second job, and we clicked immediately. And to this day, we are sisters for life. Yeah. And he was not this person that when, the first thing people hear when they hear that somebody overdosed, immediately that person had to be this horrific person. We are trying to fight that stigma, to change that stigma. We're talking about human beings that right now you could be at the best place in your life, and in half a second, that can all change. So my first thing is the non-judgmental. Right. Do not look at people and assume, because unless you walk in somebody's shoes, you don't know.
We'll be back after this next break. So So the stigma she's talking about is the heroin epidemic that is devastating and has devastating impact on communities everywhere. We are consistently losing mothers, fathers, children, siblings, spouses, and friends to this epidemic. And it feels as though it is never ending. It shouldn't be something that we should hide. It shouldn't be something that we should feel bad about. But it should be something that we should be able to express.
And, nobody's perfect. I'm not sitting here saying that my son was perfect. I'm not one of those people, somebody died. Oh, yeah, they were great. They were this, they were that. No, he had his faults.
Right, you were laying background.
Exactly.
Right, he's an encourager. He was a supporter. He was humble.
But he was a boy and he was a teenager. Right. And, he made mistakes growing up too, just like we all. I'm still a work in progress at my age. We all are. So it's so I believe that he started using heroin about a year before he passed away. Something happened in our family, and it affected him the most.
Right,
and he felt. I didn't know how to handle it. So I kind of abandoned him is the only word I can use, because I didn't stick around and hear his side of the story. And our family broke apart.
Right.
And I'm suffering from depression. I don't know what to do. We moved back to Philly.
Right.
And he started staying with my mom, who lives in Philly too, but he's still taking a 2-hour bus ride to Doylestown to go to work.
Right.
And work a 10-hour shift.
Right.
And come back. But he had started to use.
Right.
And he was still working. So slowly but surely, it got worse.
Right.
But there was mental illness there. He was in Friends Mental Hospital in Philadelphia twice, and then he was in Belmont Mental Hospital once. And Friends diagnosed him with severe depression and bipolar, where Belmont Hospital found something seriously wrong and wanted my mother and I to testify, because he had lived with her and he had lived with me.
Right.
And we didn't have to testify in mental court, because they found drugs in his system.
Right.
So I snapped on the attorney. Mm-hmm. I said, we've been trying to help him.
Right.
I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to trust either. I didn't know what. And here, you find something so wrong, right, that you want us to testify so you can keep him, because he's an adult, right, at this point.
Right.
And because he's on drugs, you don't help him.
Right.
You throw him out into the. So the attorney was shocked at my response, and then he went and got the doctor, and the doctor's talking to my mom, trying to calm her down, and I told the doctor the same thing. Right. This is the problem. Why do you think he's doing drugs?
Right. Right.
Mental illness is a real thing.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's what I was gonna that is my next question. Like, the situation that happened in your family that broke it apart, do you feel like that triggered the mental illness?
Absolutely.
And he was using drugs to
numb.
Mm-hmm.
Numb.
Yeah.
Numb.
To numb it so he didn't feel. And deal.
Yeah. And he felt alone.
Yeah.
Because we did find letters that he would leave around my mom's house. And I know that was him reaching out.
Right.
But I didn't find them until after he passed.
Right.
But to read, it's very hard to believe anyone in general, but someone who's on drugs, they lie, they steal. Yeah. He did all that. I'm not denying any of that. I don't know everything he did. Right. You know, here's a boy who lived in a suburb, a town that, is very well known for their school district, and he's living in shelters.
Yeah.
And he got worse and worse when he was at my mom's, and my mom would call me, and I would have to go over there, and I didn't really. I'm angry, but then one day I see him just sitting on the stairs in the living room with his hoodie over his head, his back against the wall, his head down, and God, something told me in my head, stop screaming.
Right.
He needs your love right now.
Yeah.
You have to be sensitive. You have to be aware. You have to think before you do anything or say anything. So I asked him, could I hug him?
Right.
And at first he just didn't respond, and he just was sitting there, and all I kept thinking was, I know he wants me to hug him. I know he needs love right now.
Yeah.
And he allowed me to hug him. I held him, and he cried and cried and cried. And because he didn't, we were arguing because I wanted to take him to Friends Hospital.
Right.
And he didn't want to go.
Him. Yeah.
I finally get him to agree.
Okay.
Taking to Friends Hospital, it's like 12 in the morning, 1 in the morning, whatever it was. But because he's an adult, he can sign himself out in 72 hours.
Right.
Which is something that is not right. The legislation regarding drugs, regarding not helping these, they're still kids. It is a fact that your brain doesn't fully develop till you're 25, 26 years old. That is a fact.
Right.
So here these kids are, they turn 18 and you say he's an adult, she's an adult.
Right.
Their brain is still not developed. So they're
kids.
not making the right decisions. And they're going to make mistakes. And they're going to... So the fact that even though, he acted up or he broke something or he, whatever, or we even fist fought. The fact that I'm taking him to the hospital and to a mental institution, and to have to take your child to a mental institution is hard enough. And to leave him there. And I went to visit him the next day, and they had started him on meds.
Okay.
And then I went to see him the next day after that, and he actually, the therapy they were giving him helped him. The meds were helping him.
Right.
But then he signed himself out. And of course he has the meds that they prescribe.
Okay.
So he's not taking them correctly. He's abusing them.
Abusing them. Right. Because there's no one there to monitor.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
So at this point, he's going down.
Right.
More and more. And we finally had to kick him out of my mother's house because it just couldn't keep happening. And he lost all this weight. He looked like an addict.
Right.
He looked like an addict. And so, I don't know where he was living, where he was staying. What I did know, I know about at least 2 shelters that he stayed at, because I would always make sure he had a phone, even though I knew he would probably sell that phone.
Right.
Make sure he had food. Sneakers.
Right.
Which, of course, I'm sure they were sold because he would be wearing donated sneakers to the shelter.
Now, some may say that that's enabling an addict
Yes.
to be an addict. Do you feel that that's what you were doing?
No, because I didn't go above and beyond as far as buying him things. I bought him sneakers because he needed sneakers, but then I didn't buy him sneakers again because I never saw those sneakers again, and he was wearing the sneakers that were donated to him by it. But as far as the phone, that had more to do with locating him.
Yeah.
That was not a luxury. We weren't buying him $500 phones.
Right.
We were getting him a phone so that we would be able to call him. And so it wasn't even that he sold a lot of the phones. We might have bought him maybe like 3 or 4 times. And again, we're talking about a year
span.
This wasn't something that he did long term.
Right.
This was something, and then he like I said, I know about the shelters. I know that he would go back to. He had a friend up where he went to college, which is in Lock Haven, Pennsylvania, 2 hours away from here. I believe 2.5, and that friend is the one that saw the worst
of what he was
going through.
Okay.
He caught, and it's hard to hear, but I needed to hear it. After Joe passed away, his friend, he felt horrible from the beginning because, again, you have these kids that, I call them kids, but they're 22, 23, 21, who felt guilty. I didn't want them living the rest of their lives with that on them, inside of them. I told each and every one of them individually at my son's services, and they're crying, and they don't care they're not embarrassed, they're crying because this is their brother.
Right.
And I would whisper in their ear, I'm his mother, and I couldn't save him.
Right.
So please don't live your life like this. You're young, and I could feel their souls go into my souls because they're literally crying on top of me. Right. We're talking about 6 foot men, 6 foot plus. Right. We're talking about little kids. Yeah. We're talking about every age, but this one kid from Lock Haven, he told me some of the things that he experienced with Joe, the bad stuff.
Right.
Like one time he caught him with the oven door open and Joe passed out from the drugs and he had been making a pizza.
Right.
So, I mean, he could have been trying to commit suicide. I don't know that.
Right.
But that's how he found him.
Right.
Another time, Joe went out with that boy's brother. Mm-hmm. And the boy's brother told the boy, I'm never hanging out with Joe again. And he was like, why? What happened? And he goes, oh, we went out up that way. Instead of Wawa, they have something called Sheets.
Right.
And that Joe was so high, he fell asleep on where they have the hot food.
Wow, yeah.
He fell asleep, and so, he passed out.
Right, not at all.
And so the owner of the store went outside to tell, because the guys were outside waiting for him.
Right.
And they were like, you need to get him out of here because I'm going to call the police.
Right.
Like, so I don't remember everything because I probably blocked some of it.
It's fine.
But there were, there's a lot of things I don't know.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of things that I don't know if he ever tried to commit suicide. But this, we tend to talk about the drugs.
Right.
But there's the mental illness.
Right. That played the huge
factor. And most of the time, that's what it is. We look at Aaron Hernandez, who was chastised, hated. And after he passed away, they check his brain.
Right.
Worst case of, what is it, CTA, or I forget what it's called, the concussion.
Oh,
They didn't
know
it was his brain.
Right.
And here was the worst case ever.
Right, taking the hits
yes.
after hit
so
after hit.
My son was a thin kid. He was a strong kid.
Right.
But you met him, you knew him.
Yes.
Thin. So it would take 3 linebackers
to take him
down.
Right.
But I know of 3 concussions that he had that I took him to the hospital.
Right.
Imagine the other concussions he had.
Right.
I'm not saying that was it.
Right.
But that could have been it.
But it could have played a part.
It could have,
right.
Exactly.
Now, you've said, you battled depression.
Yes.
Right. So that
and anxiety.
Mm-hmm. So that could always be, I believe a lot of people battle with some type of depression.
Yes.
Most people do.
Yes.
Seasonal, whatever type of depression it is, so that could have already been inside of him, but being hit constantly.
And being hit hard. Because they're coming after him because he's one of the stars of the time. So, of course, in any sport.
Right.
Because he excelled in all sports.
Right.
So, I thought about that after he passed.
Right.
I wish that I had the opportunity to have his brain examined.
Right.
But who is going to be thinking of that when you get the phone call that your son died?
Right. So it's not like your son was addicted to drugs for 10 plus years. This happened in a very short period of time, and it happened quick.
Yes.
And it took him out quick.
Yes.
Mostly because of what it was laced with? Or because
it was the fentanyl that killed him. I had to get all these reports. The toxicology report was the one that said, okay, the fentanyl killed him.
Right.
It wasn't the heroin that killed him. It was the fentanyl that killed him.
Right, because many people who've been using heroin for years and they're resilient.
Yes. I know that a guy who's in his 40s who's been on it since he was 17 years old, and somehow he's still alive.
Right.
Yeah, I have proof that it was the fentanyl that killed him.
Right.
But we have to also, like you brought up and reminded me, because, my brain doesn't work the same anymore.
It's okay.
Still grieving, still going through having to
process,
live a different life.
Yeah.
To our first family photo, while they were taking the photo, I'm dying inside.
Yeah.
And people that were there, we were at a party, and people that were there felt it too, because it was always me and my kids.
Yeah.
And he wasn't in that picture.
Right.
So it's hard. It takes a toll, and I just don't want people judging other people, and I don't want people being so nasty to us parents. We're called angel parents. That's what they call us.
Okay.
Anybody who's lost a child is an angel parent.
Okay.
And then I use social media as a platform. I have put, you've seen them.
Yes.
I put videos of myself crying.
Yes.
I talk about it. I have no qualms. You can ask me anything.
Yeah.
Anybody can.
Yeah.
If we save one life, then we saved one life because of Joe.
Right.
Because so many of us are doing things in his name, in his honor. Right. We collect clothes, we donate them, we give out food. We have our yearly event, Break the Silence.
Yes.
The first one was on his 1 year anniversary of his death, and Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick was there. The drummers from the Sixers was there. We made it a fun event. It was a picnic. You brought your own food and chairs, we have face painting for the kids, and there's a playground on the park. So we make it a fun thing, but we also had 12 organizations, mental illness and drug abuse.
Yes.
They go hand in hand.
Yes.
And as much as, and that's another thing I would like to touch on. Mental illness is a real thing.
Yeah.
Just because you don't see it in a person doesn't mean they're not going through it.
That's right.
Because people look at me and don't know.
Right.
And I'm dying inside. I'm having a panic attack while I'm talking to you, or the depression comes out of nowhere, and you're stuck in a bed, and but you don't think. But you'll see me laughing.
Right.
I work at a job which is part customer service. I deal with homeless people. I deal with people on drugs. I deal with all kinds, mental illness. We deal with that. We have social workers at our job, my job. So, and we're all trying to make a difference. That's why we work where we work. So at the end of the day, for me, our event for Joe and Joe's name, because the first one was for Joe and for everyone else, but from now on, it's his name. It's Joe Ramos's Break the Silence,
right.
But it's for everybody. It's not about him. We're just using him as that baseline.
Right.
Look at him. Look at his pictures. Look at the smile that everybody tells me. That smile of his. Yeah. That smile of his just lit up that room. And he would have conversations with grown men about history, and he would amaze me sometimes because I'm like, how the hell does he know about that? And then, like, I remember when they made the Abraham Lincoln movie. Yeah. He went and he loved it. His class went. Right. Loved it, and he knew everything already. Right. Like that. So you have, and I also have a theory about people who are too smart. Yeah. I think when you're too smart and your brain doesn't stop, it affects you as well. Yeah. I've seen it. I've lived it. And, again, mental health is a big thing. And people need to understand that and be considerate and empathetic of others. Yes. Do not sit there and look at somebody. I would cry when I was going through all the stuff I was going throughout my entire life. I'd be in a supermarket and I'd be up and down the aisle crying. Right. Like, I don't hide it because why should I? We shouldn't have to hide it. If we hide it, we're making ourselves worse. Yes. I agree. And you're destroying yourself inside. Yeah. And but then it comes out in negative ways as well. Yeah. Because you're in so much pain. Right. So it comes out in some other way. Yeah. So it's not like Joe is the only one that I know. Right. That as a young man overdose. Right. And like I said, we knew wealthy people that passed away that way, poor people that passed away that way, raised well, not raised well. This is not something that we have control over. Yeah. And again, if we don't talk to each other, if we don't, the last people that these kids want to hear from is their parents. Right. They don't want, oh, there goes mom again. There goes dad again. I don't want to, but maybe you, Tyria, can talk to my kid, and my kid will listen to you. Right. I try to do that with the younger generation. I try to talk to them and be their friend, but I also want them to know that they can come to me, that I don't judge them, that I'm not going to go and snitch them out. I just want to help them. Yeah. I don't want to see anybody, any family, anyone go through what we've been through, what I've been through. And I'm not the only one. And I have a network where there's some parents who's, this pain will be with me forever. But I'm trying my best to help others. And I'm not only talking about the children. Right. We're talking about the families
as well, yes.
People don't get it. Right. There's no time limit for grief.
Exactly. That's what I say. There's levels to it.
Yes. Yeah. And we all deal with it differently. Yes. But again, do not abandon us. Right. Because it's not only me, it's us. Yeah. And there are now a lot of organizations that are about being there for the parents of, who have lost their children, no matter how they lost their children. Right. Because you get PTSD. Yes. And I have that. Yes. And I have the depression and I have the panic attacks and, and I'm a stubborn one when it comes to going to the doctor. Yeah. I should be in therapy. I just don't trust. I trust the people like you. Right. I can talk to you. Right. I've changed in a way after Joe passed where I speak up more. Yes. And I'm more honest because there's nothing worse, nothing that can be done to me. How do I say this? Worse than Joe, except losing my other two children and my granddaughter. Right. So when you go through something like that, it changes you.
Yeah.
And it can change you in a million ways.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I've been perfect since
Right.
Joe passed away. I've been angry. I've broken things. I've disappeared.
Right.
So at times.
But I think from the last time I've seen you to this time, you're lighter. You're not allowing the grief to weigh you down.
To take me over.
To take you over.
Because it was.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
Well, I mean, rightfully so. Because it was fresh. It was new. And you had to almost compartmentalize what was going on. And then you had to realize, okay, it's now time for me to use what's going on and push myself to help other people. Because that's who you are deep down inside. You help other people deep down inside. So I feel like I'm
just looking at his picture while I'm talking
you're
to you.
Good.
Just so I
You're
can
good.
be inspired.
Yes,
right,
you're good.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. This is your story. You know what I mean? This is your life. And how you deal and how you talk about it is your way of grieving, your way of processing, your way of dealing with the situation, your way of helping someone out. Helping someone else. Like you said, the woman that you talked to whose son died right before Joe.
Right before Joe.
You see her in a state that you used to be in, and her son passed before Joe. But you're trying to encourage her.
Yes.
Because you see a light.
Yes. Because I don't like to see anyone hurt.
Right.
Regardless of the situation. But especially when I can't even make... And I get it. There's... Every text is the same with her.
Right.
Because she's suffering so much. And I know what that feels like because I live with it. But somehow, some way, I have learned the hard way in life. Not just by losing Joe.
Right.
I'm here for a reason.
Yes.
I have a purpose.
Yes.
And I don't think that I'm this grand, queen or better than anybody else.
Right.
What I'm saying is we're all here for a purpose.
Yes.
We all can do something, whether it be small or big.
Right.
It doesn't matter. Do something.
Yeah. If
you see somebody in the street and they're hungry or they're living on the... My one thing, I don't give anybody money.
Right.
That's the one thing. And I say that, and I said it at Joe's first event.
Right.
Do not give anyone money.
Right.
Because they're going to use it for drugs.
Right.
That's why they want it.
Right.
Buy them food.
Right.
I was telling you earlier.
Yes.
I work in Center City, Philadelphia, and I carry with me... you saw the big box of granola. I carry a big box of granola bars or cookies or whatever and bottles of water. Or if there's like a Dunkin' Donuts, I'll go in there and buy the what is it, that wrap that $2 for $2.
Okay.
And so whatever it is,
right.
like, and I bless them and I tell them I do this in honor of my son that passed and the love that I get from them, the hurt in their eyes. People think that these people are not people, are not human. And they're more human and loving than most people that are not homeless or mentally ill or on drugs.
Right.
So that is what our event, that is what I'm trying to do, is just change people's minds. Let's change and help each other.
Yeah.
You see a single parent at a game or at school, become their friend.
Yeah.
Or say, hey, how you doing? I'm so-and-so.
Right.
Just so that you don't know what that person is going through.
Right.
As a single parent, being a single parent is the hardest thing in the world.
It's rough, yes.
Whether you have one, whether you have two, whether you have three, whatever it is hard because you don't have anybody to bounce off of.
Right.
There's nobody else there with you to endure the bad and the good.
That's right.
So let's be there for each other.
Yeah.
Let's be there for each other. You don't have to be somebody's best friend.
That's right. That's
just
right.
Because a hello
right.
and a how you doing goes a long way.
Yes.
And that day, like Joe, I don't know if I finished earlier, what I was saying about Joe, that he spoke to the kids that nobody spoke to.
Yes.
I feel that hopefully, because Joe spoke to that one person that day, maybe that kid was going to go home and kill themselves.
Right.
Because of the pain. It's very hard to go to school, any school, no matter what size, but especially a school with over 1,000 kids. You're talking about like 1,000. Joe's graduating class was 500.
Wow. Yeah.
So, and you know, kids can be cruel. I mean, they don't know, and they can hurt other people, either other kids on purpose,
right,
or accidentally,
right.
But adults do it too.
That's right.
Because people have said things about me,
right,
that are horrific. I would never say that about someone who lost their child.
Right.
Ever. I don't care how they passed away or what they did.
Right.
I would never. And people do it to other people. Yeah. I'm not the only one it's being done to.
Right.
So if you, and especially if you're a parent, and you treat another parent that way,
right,
what does that say about you?
Right.
And your heart, right, and who you are?
Well, I always say, you know, but for the grace of God, there goes I. And a lot of people don't think that way, because one day that could be you. Mm-hmm. You know, while you're the grieving parent whose son overdosed, and they're looking down on you, the next day it could be their child. And they will look for the support that, they will look for some type of support that they may not get, but you would be willing to give it to them no matter what. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think a lot of people's mindsets really have to be. It's not what can I do for myself, but what can I do for other people?
Yes.
How can I help somebody else? Like you were saying, that single parent, a hello sometimes is all it takes. Just for them to know that they're not alone. Someone sees you and acknowledges you and has shown you some type of love. Mm-hmm. Simple hello, a simple smile. You know, it's, how can I say it? I do agree with you where we as a society tend to look down on people who use drugs, people who have mental illness, as they're weak.
Yes. We tend, and I'm not saying I've never been guilty of that in my life. Right. I've just learned it. Right. I learned it. Right.
And they do come from an uneducated place.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's another thing.
Yeah.
You know, and like I said, being a single parent, when I first moved to Doylestown and not knowing anyone and going to these games alone, and I would just sit there and not know anyone, and it hurt because you're there by yourself and you're cheering your kid on, but I'm cheering everyone on, you know, as we all should. Yeah. You know, and Joe, when, you know, now that we're talking about that, you know, I tend to block things, and a memory just popped up in my head, where when Joe played football. He started playing football when he was 10 years old for Pop Warner. Mm. He played until, so he was 10 years old, and then he stopped. That there's a certain age that you can't play Pop Warner anymore, I believe. Okay. I'm not too certain of that, but I think once you go into middle school. Okay. So he started playing 7th grade middle school football. Okay. Middle school, I don't know about anywhere else, but I know up in Doylestown, most parents that I spoke to, middle school destroyed their kids. Yeah. Like, so Joe quit. Joe stopped playing football in 7th grade. Okay. He continued basketball, soccer, rugby, whatever, but he stopped. He went to high school. Mm-hmm. And along the way, we met great people. Right. Great people who we are still friends. To me, if you're my friend, you're my family. Yeah. So these when my son passed away, that community, the head coach at the time, that coached Joe, but was still the coach after Joe had graduated, right, told one of my best friends that entire town was devastated when he passed away. We're talking about Joe knew the mayor and his wife from Chalfont, which is the town over, which is very similar to Doylestown.
Right.
And we're talking about older people.
Yeah.
And they attended.
Right.
His wife attended.
Right.
And reaches out to me.
Right.
And donated for, we're non-profit. We're not trying to make money. We just ask for money to cover the cost for the picnic.
Right.
And then we use whatever's, like now we have some money from last year, which will go to this year's event.
Right.
But we have been blessed where people want to help.
Yeah.
So we get donations, like water bottle, like somebody we know, he owns a beverage place, donated cases and cases of water. There's so many things I could say like that, that people just came together.
Right.
And we brought people of every color together.
Yes. Right. It's no respect of color, person,
exactly.
ethnicity. It hits everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, and again, I became friends with, again, these are not people that I see.
Right.
It's thank God for text sometimes because, and here when I go to memorials,
right,
I'll not only honor my son,
right,
I honor others.
Yeah.
And I'll send that parent a picture. You see there's candles with names of kids that passed away. And they respond with, thank you so much for always honoring my child. You always, because they were here.
Yeah.
Like my song for Joe by Beyonce. I was here. I lived. I loved. I did.
Yeah.
And in 22 years, he left a legacy that most 80-year-olds
won't
have it or won't. And at the end of the day, that's what I want. I want to make a difference. I want to go to Washington. I want to change mental illness rules and regulations and laws and drug laws and as far as the help, because you're 18, 20, 25, 30, and you know that you're mentally not right. Right. You take the drugs because you don't want to feel that pain.
Yeah.
And there's nobody that they throw you into the street.
Yes, they
How
do.
many shelters do I drive by on the way home? And you have to be there at a certain time in order to get a bed.
Yeah. And then you have to fight while you're in there.
And you have to watch. And then how can you sleep? Because you don't know if they're going to steal your stuff.
Right. Right. So
it's
easier
God
to be out on the street.
People go to the movies and they see movies and they see and they think, oh, it's a movie.
Yeah.
Like, remember Will Smith's Pursuit of Happiness?
Yes. Yes.
That happened. Yeah. That was a true story.
Yes.
This poor man is holding on to his son in a shelter.
Right.
He's living in a bathroom at a train station.
Yes.
And then, boom.
Right.
Finally, his idea that he wanted to, he's what, like a millionaire now, and his, what they went through to get to that point, and he gives back, and that's the one thing, give back.
Yes.
If you are blessed in this world, give back.
Yes.
And I know people who don't have it like that,
right?
And they still give back.
Yeah. Drugs, how can I say it? They have a way of just taking over everything you are and everything you were taught to be. I did cocaine for only a small amount of time and didn't realize until someone said it to me. I went back to work. I was working in a bar at that time and went back to work like I was only gone for 3 days or like my weekend. And he literally looked at me and was just like, Divine, because that was my my stage name at that time. Divine, you've been missing for a month. And when he said that to me and the look on his face, and this was a hard man, he never really showed any emotion for any of us, but he showed emotion for me at that time and was just like genuinely worried. It was like a wake-up call for me. It was like, what? I lost a whole month of time and didn't even realize it. Like, God, you got to help me. And I'm thankful that I had a relationship with God and I knew God, and God saved me from myself. So that is what I am admonishing a lot of you to really get closer with God. This took her son, like she said, in no time. He wasn't using the drug for a long time. Only a little bit. And that's all it takes sometimes. It's just that one time, that one hit, that one pull, that one going out when you're not supposed to, that one more drink. It just takes that one more to almost in your life or to in your life. So I encourage each and every one of you to shift the narrative in your life. If you know what you're doing right now is not who you are or what you're supposed to be, reach out and get help. You've been listening to Shift the Narrative with Tyria and special guest Jocelyn. I am thankful for her and each and every one of you. Make sure you go and support her event on Saturday, July 25th, 2020 at Hennessy Park, Hanusey Park, located at 4757 Doylestown, Pennsylvania. As always, don't forget to shift the narrative. Be free, y'all. Be free. You've been listening to Shift the Narrative with Tyria and special guest Jocelyn. I am thankful for her and each and every one of you. Make sure you go and support her event on Saturday, July 25th, 2020 at Hennessy Park, Hanusey Park, located at 4757 Doylestown, Pennsylvania. As always, don't forget to shift the narrative. Be free, y'all. Be free.